There's a kind of love we only begin to grasp when we feel deeply seen, deeply known, deeply wanted. It's the kind of love that Jesus describes when he says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." Now, it's to be noted that Jesus doesn't say they all understand the right doctrine or theology. Nor does he say they all behave perfectly. No, he says, I know them. And not just know about them, but know them in the most relational, tender, and committed of ways. That is what makes this Good Shepherd Sunday such a balm for our souls. Because it reminds us that the one who leads us is also the one who loves us most completely. Now, I recall a moment when one of my dearest friends, mother of a 4-year-old, was in Target with her son, and consumed by what she was seeing on the shelves and a little distracted, she turned to her cart and she looked, and her son was gone. Panic ensued, overtook her, and she began looking and darting around, checking every crevice, corner, trying to find him. And she called out his name, James, and louder, James! And not wanting to look like a crazy lunatic mom, she pulled back a little, but she kept searching. And she went up this aisle and then back down that one. And then she turned the corner. And there, tucked underneath a rack of hanging shirts, he was. Tears streaming down his face. And she looked at him and she said, James! And he said, Mama! And he ran to her and wrapped his arms around her neck, and he whispered into her ear, I knew that you would find me. Now, what mattered to her in that moment most of all was that he was safe and that he was found. But what mattered most of all to him was that the one who loved him most of all found him. And isn't this what we all long for? That we all desire and need to be able to not only trust and know that we are loved, but that should we get lost, we will be found. That we are never, ever too far out of the reach of our God. In today's gospel, the religious leaders press on Jesus. Tell us plainly if you are the Messiah, they say. And I think it's an earnest question on the surface. They really do want to know. Well, at least a part of them does. A part of them is actually rather terrified to know. Jesus responds, I did tell you, but you did not believe. My sheep hear my voice, he says. In other words, I've been telling you, and I've been showing you, and I have been loving you, but you have not been able to hear it. Now, this wasn't because they were bad people, not at all. I think it's just because their hearts and their ears were not attuned to the voice of love. And although a part of them truly wanted to know, their understanding of who the Messiah was and was supposed to be, a conquering king, a powerful ruler, a political liberator, their expectation would not allow them room for the possibility of God's anointed one showing up like this, as a healer, as a servant, as a shepherd who would lay down his life for the sheep. Now, I think we all have trouble hearing from time to time, don't you? Especially to people who are closest to us, or people who actually are bold enough to tell us the truth. Sometimes what is heard is just too hard to hear. It's hard to comprehend. Sometimes we can't hear what love is saying, even when it is spoken plainly, because it doesn't fit the shape of our expectations of who God is, or how the world should work, or how it should look, or how people should behave. This can make it nearly impossible for us to recognize truth, even when it is standing right in front of us. Who Jesus was, and what he said, and what he did, no matter how true, did not fit the narrative of the Jewish leaders. He simply did not make sense. Perhaps you've met people like that. They just don't make sense. But more than a simple recognition, sharing with them who he is, acknowledging he and the Father are one, what Jesus is speaking to here in our gospel is relationship. He says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." And I think there's something profoundly beautiful in that. To be known by God, not just seen, not just numbered or counted, but known by name and to the depths of our souls. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. The psalmist says this as he begins to describe the most profound and meaningful relationship of his life, the most profound and meaningful relationship of our lives, that with the Lord. Every need, he says, spiritual, emotional, physical, is known to God and is met in God. In God, we are completely cared for. When we are weary, God gives rest. When we are lost, God provides guidance. When we are afraid, God comforts. He restores my soul, he says, which translates from the Hebrew as he revives me, like breathing life into me. In God, our shepherd, we find that deep longed for restoration, the healing of what is tired and wounded or broken within us and between us and one another. God even sets a table before us where our enemies are not just mere onlookers watching us feast, but in fact are invited to partake right alongside us, just as we all are invited to partake at the table each week. It is there at the table alongside those that we might dislike or find annoying or reject, or gosh, maybe we just never took the time to get to know them. It's there that we are all restored and gathered together by this God of ours. All this and so much more is what the shepherd gives to us. And we, God's beloved, are not expected to find our way on our own. Because, like sheep, we need him. Truly, our lives depend upon Jesus. And perhaps it's the depth of that truth, those words, that so many people find challenging and hard to hear and comprehend. Because when we are bold enough to acknowledge to someone else that our life depends on Christ, we shift the universe. We are creatures who claim our self-sufficiency with both hands. We are people whose desire for autonomy and control hinders our ability to hear and to listen for and to believe in the voice of God who calls us. Yet even when we wander, and even if we lose our way, and we do, and we will again and again, Christ, like a shepherd, never abandons us. He is always present and always calling us to him, calling us home. It is said that sheep never weary of their shepherd's voice, nor that the shepherd's voice ever goes hoarse from calling for the sheep. Rather, the shepherd's voice is like a balm that comforts and that assures. Christ says, I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hands. What greater assurance could there be? Like the apostles and the disciples who journeyed together as a community into that great unknown, we too, as a community of the faithful, are knit together by the love and attentiveness of the one who leads us, the one who calls you and me by name. Jesus' love isn't passive. It is not fleeting. He promises, as does Psalm 23, that his love, that God's love, is not love that is life-taking, but is love that is life-giving, transformative. What wondrous love is this that has the power to change how we see the world and how we see ourselves and how we see one another. Can you hear him calling you? Will you listen? Will you allow him to lead you? Perhaps even to change you. Author and poet Maya Angelou once said this: people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And so I wonder, how do the words of Jesus or the Psalms make you feel? What is it that wells up within you as you hear them spoken to you, as you say them aloud? Whatever it is that comes up and that arises, I encourage you to allow yourself to feel it, to experience it, because these are not just simply words, not just a poem or a metaphor used to prove a point. What David and what Jesus himself speak is the heartbeat of our faith, the truth upon truth, that we are loved with so deep and so persistent and so complete a love that nothing, no fear, no failure, no lostness, no person can separate us from it, ever. To the religious leaders in Jerusalem, to the disciples, to us today, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, the Messiah, the risen one, offers us so much more than mere information about who he is. He offers us belonging and a home. And he is telling us plainly, if only we have ears to hear and hearts to receive it, that we are loved, that we matter, that we are his, and that we always will be. We may not always remember what Jesus said. We may not always remember what Jesus did. But we, who are beloved by the Good Shepherd, who calls us by name, who meets our every need, who will never abandon us, we will always, and we must always remember how Jesus makes us feel. Doesn't that feel good?